Good afternoon, all. We're just waiting for everyone to join us. We have a large group today, so just give us a moment. It takes a lot more time to start when there are so many people in the group.
I think you can probably get started, Maureen.
Yeah, I think so. Good afternoon. My name is Maureen Mollahan. I'm the Assistant Dean of Development and Alumni Relations for BU's Wheelock College of Education and Human Development. Thanks very much for attending. We're thrilled to have you with us. I'm going to cover a couple of housekeeping things. We are recording this session, so if you'd like to have a link later afterwards to share or to review, please just let us know and we're happy to send that to you. Also, we're using the Q&A function, so you're able to send us questions. We will be having a Q&A section at the end, which is frankly, we've allowed quite a bit of time for it, but we'll try to address something if it's current to the moment. If we miss it, we'll certainly deal with it when we get to the Q&A section. If somehow we get to the point where we've missed your questions, then we can, as long as you don't choose an anonymous ID, then we can also get back to you with the answers. So with that, we will get started here. I guess we'll launch our slides. So thanks for coming to the Future of BU Wheelock conversation with Dean Chard. And here we go. We've got a few things that have come up, and I thought we'd sort of review that the alumni relations effort for Wheelock alumni is strong and constant, and we can always use a heads up with something. We have an alumni magazine that comes out next week, so hopefully you will get it in a week or so. If you don't get one, please email me, and my email address or my phone number is at the bottom of the slide. I'd be happy and actually would love to know if you didn't get it, because we're trying to make sure it gets to everybody. We do have a quarterly e-newsletter that goes out. The last one was sent November 3rd. Again, if you haven't seen it, please let me know. It may be because you've opted out of the emails at some point, but we can always make that change. We're also doing a number of webinars through the year. We have a few popping up here on November 12th, and there's one on November 19th. And then we've got a new option, which is BU Connects. It's a new way to connect with alumni along affinity interests. So I urge you to go on and sign up. You can list as many areas of interest as you'd like, and you'll be able to see different articles and different ways to connect. And there's my contact information. You can always resend. We can go to the next slide. There's one more piece. Oh, no, I guess not. We have one more piece, which is we have Giving Tuesday, which is December 1st, and we are focusing on the Ruth Batson Scholarship, which is for diversity and equity. And we're hoping that we can gather everybody together and not only give to the college itself, but to give to the college and support this particular scholarship. It supports graduate students who are Black or Latinx, and graduate students who are on track to become teachers. And so it's a great scholarship that was given by an alum. They chose not to endow it, but because they like others to give and participate in it with them. And that's also why they didn't name it for themselves. They wanted to name it after somebody who's important to the community. And Ruth Batson certainly filled that bill. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dean Chard, and we can get started. Thanks very much.
Wonderful. Thanks, Maureen, and welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your Tuesday. If you're in the New England area, we're having an unseasonably warm day, and the air conditioning has been turned off in our buildings on campus, so it's a little warm here. But I hope wherever you are located, you're healthy and safe and enduring the pandemic and doing your best to keep you and your family and loved ones as safe as possible. It's a great opportunity for me to have a chance to catch up a little bit with what's happening at BU Wheelock. We are now in our third year post-merger, and there have been many wonderful things that have happened in the development of the new college that we want to share with you. I thought I would give you just a couple of minutes of what's happening on campus this fall. BU, like many colleges and universities, particularly residential colleges and universities, was eager to figure out what were the best health and safety protocols to ensure that the faculty, staff, and students could remain as healthy and productive and supportive during this time. And so BU has in place a number of testing and safety protocols, including masking and distancing. We're operating a program called Learn from Anywhere because, as many of you know, Boston University has a large international student body. Many of those students were unable to return to the United States to continue to pursue their degrees, so they are studying from home. Many students inside the United States are studying from home, taking courses remotely at BU. At the same time, we're offering a very large majority of our classes in face-to-face mode as well, so that the students who were able to return to Boston or to campus are able to go to their classes physically distanced with their masks and participate in classes here on campus. So we have an interesting combination of coursework, and our student teachers and our child life professionals and our counselors, folks who are providing direct service as a result of their practicum requirements. Many of them are back in their schools and clinics and agencies providing those services because of the status of instruction in the public schools. Many of our student teachers are doing virtual learning with schools, although some of them are face-to-face. Most of them are providing their teaching virtually, and the state of Massachusetts has provided waivers for them so that they can continue to make progress toward their degree and toward licensure and to complete their programs in a timely way. In the spring, we expect a similar situation, a learn from anywhere model, but we do expect that as we've gotten smarter about how to protect ourselves and to be safer, we will see an increasing number of students, staff, and faculty returning to campus. And that it will feel more like what you all might remember of Boston University when you were a student here. And we hope certainly that by fall of 2021, we'll have returned to a more traditional residential experience for most of our students. Let me just give you a little bit of background about the next topic I want to discuss, which is the GuideStar. So after a full year of transition work between the point in which we merged the former School of Education with historic Wheelock College, we determined that one of the challenges we had as a new college was that we didn't have a unifying objective or focus for our work. And even our name, we're a college of education and human development. Even our name says that we're not just a school of education or just a college of education. We do much more than that, including counseling and sports psychology and human development and child life and a number of other areas. And so we wanted to really think about how it was a College of Education and Human Development in this era could best serve the community, the region, and the world. And so our strategy started last fall. We invited over 40 leaders from around the country. These were leaders from higher education, from medical fields, from nonprofit sectors, from the private sector, visionaries who sort of think about the future and what the future holds. And we heard a number of consistent themes. One of the things they told us we should think about was our location. The fact that we were located in the birthplace of public education in the United States, Boston. The fact that both former institutions had a strong relationship with the city of Boston, that our focus should be on applied research. We should think about research and practice that were tightly enmeshed and embedded with one another, because that was sort of a history of both institutions. And so, and that we should be thinking about the issues of the day. And of course, for many of our faculty, staff, and students, one of the primary issues of the day was about equity. And this is about racial equity, about disability and equity, about sexuality and equity, a number of issues around equity. And then, of course, the events of this spring brought all of that to the forefront. But in January of last year, we established our new GuideStar. And this is what the college sees as its primary unifying focus. So recognizing that systems are where we interact with children, their families, and their communities, that those systems need to be transformed in such a way that they help children and their families and their communities to thrive and to be sustainable and to promote justice for the future, both in Boston and beyond. So all of our work kind of focuses on this singular area. We think about preparation of professionals who will transform systems. And so we are currently working on the development of a new undergraduate major, several new master's degree programs, and a new PhD program, the first college-wide PhD for the College of Education, the Wheelock College at BU. All of these things have at their center this focus on transforming systems where learning and human development happen. So the next step was really to get in sync with Boston University and begin to build a strategic plan. And so we thought long and hard about how best to do that, when in fact we had an expert on our very own leadership team. And I want to introduce you to Mariana Stoyancheva, who is the Assistant Dean for Strategic and Executive Affairs. And Mariana does many important things around the college, most recently taking on the focus of admissions and recruitment. But Mariana led our faculty and staff through a strategic planning process, and she's going to give you a little bit of insight as to how that process went. And then we would like to give you some examples of what we plan to be working on for the next decade, and then open up the floor for questions. So Mariana, let me hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Dean Chard, and welcome everyone. It's as Maureen and Dean Chard said, it's wonderful to have so many of you with us today on such a beautiful day in Boston, for those of you who are in the Boston area. So again, I would like very quickly to give you an update on the strategic plan and our strategic planning process, and what really guided us while embarking on this effort was our GuideStar that Dean Chard just introduced. Very quickly on the process, we took strategic planning very seriously. And we really wanted that to be an effort that counted, and because it was creating the foundational charter for our new college. And we wanted for our process to be highly participatory and inclusive. So we actually made an open call to our faculty and staff colleagues to join our strategic planning committee instead of appointing members to the committee. We introduced and launched our strategic planning in January. And by February, we already had established our mandate. We had our committee of 29 faculty and staff members. And the good news for us was that the committee was fully representative of the content areas, of the academic areas within our college, as well as the functional departments on the administration side. And we held monthly committee meetings that started in February through June, and they weren't really interrupted by the pandemic and by the shutdown. In fact, we used our monthly meetings as a way for all of us to come together and think about the future of WheeLog. So I keep saying that the strategic planning was the effort that kept us all inspired and kept us all encouraged during the global pandemic. We established 5 working groups based on areas of strategic focus that we identified 5 areas of strategic focus. And throughout the process, we kept an open feedback opportunities for the members of our communities to submit comments. We have our strategic plan on our website, and we're updating regularly as the draft was developing. Very quickly, just again, as part of the process, we had to select a framework for the strategic plan, something to keep us focused. And what you see on the screen is really one of the strategic planning frameworks we decided to use. And again, the vision, we already had the vision. The vision was our guide star. And the second thing we decided to do as a committee was to think about our core values, like as the aspirations of our work and really the statements of intention of how we will go about to deliver our vision and our strategic plan. So we defined 7 areas, 7 core values we felt were the aspiration and also the focus of our work. And the values are diversity and belonging, advocacy and agency, integrity, humility, innovation and transformation, curiosity and inquiry, and sustainability. Again, we had a working group that developed the values, and then we went back to our faculty and staff to further refine and approve the list of values. Once we had our core values, we really moved into the digging into the 5 strategic pillars for our college for the next decade. And again, the way we defined the 5 strategic pillars was we unpacked the guide star, and we said, in order for us to realize the guide star, we would need our work to focus on equity, diversity, and belonging, on research, and we teach, which is such an important part of our mission as a College of Education and Human Development. So how we approach teaching, knowledge sharing, and learning. Partnerships are key to our work, partnerships with strategic partners and with our communities. And of course, an important area for us that we identified was allyship, activism, and advocacy. And once we had the 5 pillars, we spent most of the spring working in the five strategic in the five working groups to further define each area of strategic focus and come up with a list of strategic objectives, and also dig even deeper and come up with develop SMARTY goals to achieve, that will help us achieve each objective. And then the final step of our effort was, once we had identified the SMARTY goals, is then really develop dashboards with 5 and 10-year benchmarks to measure implementation. Because for those of you who have studied strategic planning or who have gone through strategic planning, you probably know that the most important thing about a strategic plan, and an area where most strategic planning efforts fail, is implementation. Because many plans actually just end up sitting on a dusty shelf and no one is looking at them. And again, we really wanted to develop a strategic plan that is really the foundation of our work and a blueprint of what we will do as a college in the next decade. And we are now in this phase when we are gathering feedback, and that's why we're having this conversation with all of you today, because we would like to, again, to really invite you, and we will be happy to share the strategic plan with you. But again, the strategic plan is actually already listed on our website. So what you can do is click on our click on the link that we will provide with this presentation, review our strategic plan, our current draft, and give us your thoughts on what you think about the plan. We have actually developed some list of questions just to guide. They're not really, these are more of an examples of questions that you may want to think about as you review the plan.
Thank you, Mariana. I want to draw your attention to the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen. It'd be great if you want to type some questions in there. I know that some of you registered questions when you signed up to join the webinar. I want to try to address a few of those. Someone asked about the former interim dean, Kathy O'Connor, and where she is at. Kathy is an associate dean for doctoral studies and is actually leading our faculty to create the new PhD at BU Wheelock, and it remains a vital faculty member in language and literacy. Another question was, what about the legacy of early childhood at that was so important to both BU and to Wheelock? I'm very pleased to announce that we are submitting a proposal for a new early childhood master's degree in leadership and policy focused on childhood well-being. We are, I think that gives me a great opportunity to talk about our partnership with the city of Boston. We have now established ourselves as the academic partner for the region. If you're familiar with Boston or live in Boston, for the region that extends from the Boston Medical Center in the South End down to the Trotter School and in North Dorchester and part of Roxbury. So we're working with a number of schools in there to set up programs for early childhood education, as well as for our various teaching programs and our counseling programs. So we're really working hard to partner closely with the city of Boston, as that was one of the main interests on the part of the university in creating the merger. Someone has asked about the undergraduate teacher licensure at, so interestingly, over the course of time, fewer and fewer students are coming to BU to seek a teacher license. We are down to about 40 students entering our undergraduate program each year. So justifying ourselves as a teacher license teacher licensing institution only is no longer a way for us to think of ourselves as a vital college. So what we're doing is building, what we've noticed from our discussions with young people is they don't know if they want to be a teacher when they enter university. That could be their interest, but they may have other interests related to human service professions. So our faculty has created an undergraduate program that will allow people to pursue a license, probably in their graduate degree, which many school districts across the country now require anyway. And it also gives them a chance to sample a number of other experiences across the city of Boston, working in nonprofits, rehabilitation centers, clinics, homeless shelters, those kinds of places where they can get other kinds of experiences to help them understand the full range of potential human service professions they might pursue. There's a question about the enrollment. So our enrollment numbers at the undergrad level, as I just mentioned to you, first year, first semester, we get about between 40 and 50 students per year. And that number could go up with the development of our new undergraduate major. At the graduate level, it's much more robust. We have a number of strategic partnerships with public school districts, private school districts, charter schools, as well as other agencies that we work closely with in child life, as well as in counseling, career counseling, sports psychology, and a number of other areas. So our graduate programs are far more robust than our undergraduate programs, which we understood at the point of the development of the new college. Other questions that were raised, I think, include questions around sort of our future in research. As a part of a research comprehensive university, we believe that creating knowledge as well as applying that knowledge to the preparation of professionals is absolutely critical to our future. So a number of our new faculty hires are people who are themselves active researchers. We've gone from $5 million in externally funded research in 2019 to almost $9 million last year. We anticipate that to grow even further as our faculty grows. We hired 5 new faculty members last year in a wide range of professional areas, including TESOL, education policy, teacher education policy, as well as sports psychology and a number of other areas. Another question that was raised by some of you had to do with our relationship with the School of Social Work. As many of you know, the historic Wheelock College had a social work program that was merged with the School of Social Work at BU, which is a graduate school. And we do have a number of joint degree programs with the School of Social Work in education, particularly in special education. And of course, we have a number of close colleagues in the School of Social Work that we keep in very close contact with. I think they're doing very well. One of our former faculty members at Wheelock College is now the Associate Dean of the School of Social Work. So they've even taken on leadership positions in the School of Social Work. We do have, I'm answering now some of the questions you're posting in your in the Q&A. We have graduate programs in counseling psychology at the master's level as well as at the PhD level. And those are, the PhD is accredited by the American Psychological Association. It's a very rigorous PhD program. The master's programs are some of our more popular counseling programs. A question was asked about how many Wheelock versus SED grads are on the University Advisory Council. I have no idea, Arlene, what you mean by this question, so you might need to give me a little more detail there. Ted Ladd asks, have the economics of higher education changed irrevocably? And if so, how will this change BU and Wheelock? Thanks, Ted. It's great to see you on the call. Yes, I think the economics of higher education will, I think, increasingly be challenging. As many of you know, if you follow the news in higher education, a number of colleges and universities have closed or have merged here in the Boston area, but certainly across the country. I think our merger of Wheelock and BU School of Education remains in the last few years one of the few successful mergers. And what we're likely to see, I think, in the future is a need for some changes made at the governmental level around student loans. But I also think a lot of colleges and universities are both trying to raise private support. Here at BU this fall, we became a meet all need institution. So if you get accepted into BU as an undergrad and get grants from the federal government, BU covers the remaining costs of your tuition. So the point was to make BU as accessible as possible. At the graduate level, a great example of the support we've raised locally is the one that Maureen talked to you about at the top of the webinar, the Batson Scholarship, where we had a private donor step up and say, I would really like to see the teaching workforce in Boston look more like the demographic of Boston. And we know part of the challenge is an economic one. So that family helped us with financial support to provide deeper scholarships for a lot of students so that we can bring in more students to become teachers who can then return to the city of Boston to work. A parent of a current student would like to have me talk about career development programs for soon-to-be graduates and what you might be planning in this area in the coming years. There are a number of things. Of course, Boston University has a large career center that does a tremendous amount of work around helping students prepare themselves. All of the things you might think about resume writing, using, most people don't get jobs today like they used to. My son has taught me about Indeed and a number of other websites where people look for jobs these days. We also, within the college, have a means of posting positions with our faculty so they can reach out directly to their advisees. And then I think Maureen mentioned to you at the beginning of the webinar a new program called BU Connects, which is, I would call it sort of a Facebook, but limited only to BU alumni. And so all students who are graduating will be encouraged to be part of BU Connects, just like our alumni are encouraged to be part of BU Connects, and it will allow people to post positions there that they may be searching for, so that students graduating from BU Wheelock, for example, will see those positions and be able to reach out and learn more about them directly. How many faculty layoffs has Wheelock had? The way we approached the budget reductions that occurred this summer, and we had a 15% budget reduction as a result of the pandemic. And the way that BU Wheelock approached that was we asked our faculty to really dig deep and take on as many teaching positions, our full-time faculty to take on as many teaching positions as possible so that we could minimize our full-time layoffs. We were able to retain all of our full-time faculty through their contract periods, which for most of them will be, many of those will be through the end of this year. So we did two things. We took advantage of retirements, some people who were moving for other purposes, and we discontinued a number of part-time faculty in order to retain our full-time faculty. So we had no permanent faculty layoffs at the beginning of this year. We did lose a few staff members, very unfortunately, but compared to some institutions across the country that took 20% hits, we feel very fortunate that that did not happen. And now we're back to hiring again. So we feel, again, very fortunate to have come through this part of the pandemic. Now, one of the biggest challenges for a large residential institution like Boston University is not enrollment. In fact, our enrollment numbers are pretty robust at the undergrad and graduate level. One of the areas we struggled with the most is in dining and housing. So because almost about 43% of students did not return to campus, you can imagine that amount of money that would come to the university had to be found someplace so that we could reduce our deficit that resulted from those losses. So our enrollments remain robust, and we now know that many students have asked if they can return to campus in the spring. So we anticipate some of that will grow over time. Sorry, there's so many questions. I'm going to call on my colleagues to draw things out.
David,
Go ahead.
there have been a couple of questions about the status of the Wheelock campus and facilities.
Oh yeah, yep. In fact, I just had lunch on the lawn of the Hawes campus, the campus in Brookline, what is referred to as the Whiteman House. All of the Wheelock campus on the Riverway and in Brookline remain part of Boston University. They are, the residences are being used. Peabody Hall, for those of you who may have lived in Peabody Hall over the years, has been converted to a graduate residence hall and is fully occupied. The buildings are being used for Wheelock faculty in some cases. The Earl Center is still located on the Fenway campus. The Wheelock Family Theater is still operating out of the Fenway campus. So it is still a very vital part of BU. The Hawes campus during the pandemic is actually being used for a lot of teaching. It's also been used for office space for a number of parts of the university. And there's some talk about it being used in the future as part of our university-wide executive education programming. I see a couple of questions on diversity and equity. Will there be outreach? Anne, I'm assuming part of the answer to your question is that we are working closely with the City of Boston and the portions of the City of Boston that I think really cut across a broad dimension of the demographic of Boston. So certainly within the City of Boston, we are doing tremendous outreach. We've been in discussions with the Native American populations in parts of the country. We've been contacted by folks in South Dakota on the Redbud Reservation about early childhood support. We'd love connections with Native American populations in the state of Massachusetts. If anyone has connections directly for us, please reach out. We'd love to have further conversations about ways we might work in other areas. Other trends and questions, Mariana, that you see?
So Arlene did explain, so basically her point was that over the years, SED or Wheelock was not represented on the university advisory council. So I think her question was whether there is now any representation at all.
If the advisory council you're referring to, Arlene, is the Board of Trustees, there are 2 members of the Board of Trustees who are, I would say, affiliated with Wheelock. They are former trustees from Wheelock College, but the Board of Trustees at BU is not a representational board. It's a governing board, which means it has no official representation for any school or college. I hope that makes sense. I have a Dean's Advisory Board, which includes about 15 people who are former students, alumni, and supporters specifically of BU Wheelock. And they represent both historic Wheelock College as well as the former School of Education here. How many part-time adjunct faculty were laid off? I don't have the exact number for you, Martha. A number of them were slated to be laid off and then were rehired in August as we got our enrollment numbers. But I think the number is somewhere around maybe about 30 people were not asked to teach in the fall.
So there is another question about the EDD offerings, and since we have now introduced the PhD in educational studies, the question is, does that mean no EDD? And then I'm reading the question. I have heard to get tuition remission to do PhD part-time, which was a reason for EDD. How many doctorates and what kinds will be offered for staff, part-time, and full-time fellowships for non-staff?
Got it. So the PhD is a full-time degree. It is entirely funded by Boston University, and you may not be in that program part-time. There is an EDD program currently in pre-K to 12 leadership, and that is a brand new program that we launched a year ago with a full slate of students. There are other EDD programs, those are considered professional doctorates, that are being considered and proposals being developed now in areas like higher education and education studies. But currently we are not admitting any EDD students except to the pre-K-12 program. Educational technology was closed at BU a number of years ago. That happened prior to the merger with Wheelock. We have a group of faculty who are exploring the development of an education technology and entrepreneurship program. We believe that there are students who are very interested in working in education tech industry. And we have Emmy nominated tech designers on our faculty and faculty who work very much with the MIT Media Lab and other places focused specifically on educational technology. So we certainly plan to propose programs into the future. I think one of the things for many of you who are alumni of either SED or Wheelock, one of the things that's challenging is to come back and not see things exactly the way they were when you were here. But in fact, that's the lifeblood of a human organization, is change and reinventing itself and understanding what people need at the time. And so that's what this strategic plan is that Mariana talked to you about, is creating a path for our future. And sometimes that means some programs are closed to make room for others. And so that is, there's a common theme to change and the importance of change so that we can appeal to students for what they need today. Other questions? I know there are a lot of old friends on the call. I was looking at the participant list, so feel free to ask any questions you might have. I can tell you that I bet there are people on the call who wonder what happened to the former Wheelock students. So we're in our final year of the teach out. So the final year of students, those who were freshmen the year that the merger was announced. I got data on this just yesterday. So we are at about 93% graduate, meaning most of those students who transitioned from the former Wheelock College have graduated. And we had a few students who chose to move on to other institutions and a few students who have taken leave. But the total number of students who have taken leave is fewer than 20 out of the entire student body. So we feel very, very good about the level of success that the former Wheelock students have had since the merger. And BU has done everything to address its commitments that were made as part of the merger agreement. So, and for the most part, the students, obviously the students from last spring would have really liked to have had a graduation ceremony, a commencement ceremony. And unfortunately, we were unable to provide that. We did have a celebration of their completion of the spring semester. President Brown has committed to, if public health allows, committed to having a 2020 and a 2021 commencement this spring. The question will be whether or not the state of Massachusetts and public health will allow for that to happen. If not, I suspect BU will do that at another time. What about former SEDs teaching in the area of deaf education? Thank you for your question, Eloise. As you know, we have a very well known, very well respected deaf education program at BU. And our deaf education program is growing stronger. Our faculty has grown, and in fact, next year, with approval from the provost, we plan to search for and hire yet another faculty member in deaf education. We are the only provider of ASL instruction for the entire university. So a lot of students pass through Wheelock doors to get their ASL language requirements. And we work closely with institutions across the country, the Texas School for the Deaf, the School for the Deaf in San Diego, as well as across the state of Massachusetts, to place teachers who are getting their master's degrees in deaf education. It is a strong program, and we have a very close relationship with Gallaudet University, both for recruitment, but also many of our students travel to Gallaudet to work closely with students there to understand about deaf culture and the needs of deaf individuals. So very positive outcomes there, Eloise. We'd love for the program to be even bigger, but at this stage, we take as many students as we possibly can who are qualified. Other questions? Mariana, Maureen, anything I've missed?
I can't think of anything.
I
was
used
previously.
Go ahead.
Well, there was one, there were a couple that had been sent earlier on about alums from either previous historic college being involved, and there are no limitations. It doesn't matter which was your historic school, whether it be SED or Wheelock. So reaching out, becoming part of anything that we're doing and reaching out to me I would love to hear from you, and love to hear your ideas too.
Yeah, we were a little bit concerned that some people said they felt like they weren't involved in our alumni engagement. We want to be sure we have your contact information. That's the first thing. You also have to understand that Maureen and I haven't been able to travel since March. So we would very much like to meet you where you are when we can. We traveled quite a bit the year before to visit people in the Bay Area and Washington, D.C. and Florida and New York. And we had plans to get to Chicago, and we were in Denver. So we certainly will be back on the road visiting alumni where you are as soon as we possibly can travel safely. In the meantime, these webinars that Maureen announced, the social justice and equity webinars, you're welcome to join any of those. We'd love to have you involved in those. I think they're tremendously interesting. I also think that there will be more of those. We're eager to do more of those throughout the spring semester. We do plan an alumni forum again this year in the spring. We have to move that, of course, virtually in the short term, but we certainly would like to invite you all to that. Someone asked if there were a lot of former Wheelock alums involved in this call. The answer is yes. I recognize many historic Wheelock alums on this call, as well as supporters and former parents. So please let us know if there are other ways you would like to engage. Check out BU Connects if you're a social media person. There's a lot of folks there you can connect with. I'm going to answer a few more questions that people have now asked. Someone asked about the future of the Wheelock Theater. The Wheelock Family Theater is now part of the College of Fine Arts. So it's being administered under Dean Harvey Young. The staff at the Wheelock Family Theater is the same staff that was there when the merger occurred. They are now back to offering education courses at the Wheelock Family Theater. I think they're virtual currently, but once the pandemic subsides, I think they will be back in business offering a full program of shows as well as outreach and education as they have done in the past. And a number of former Wheelock staff and faculty, including myself, serve on the Wheelock Family Theater board. So very proud of what the Wheelock Family Theater does. Someone asked about the former Kent Street, the President's House, and the Colchester properties. Those are now privately owned. They were sold prior to the merger in order to ensure that we could meet our costs at the former Wheelock College. They're owned by a development company that purchased those two properties in Brookline. Is there an opportunity for alumni from other BU colleges to take or audit ASL classes? That is a question I can't answer. Mariana, do you know the answer to that question?
I was looking at the question. No, but we could certainly find out and get back.
Absolutely. I'm sure if it's possible, Edward, we will find a way, because we would love to spread the use of ASL to a much broader audience if possible. Other questions? I think you're going to see really big things happen at Wheelock over the next few years. Let me give you a couple of examples. The state of Massachusetts was struggling to figure out how to secure a database on what schools were doing during the pandemic across the Commonwealth. And they turned to our faculty to help establish that database. And our faculty, working closely with the new faculty of computing and data science, released that database today. And the Lieutenant Governor and Governor announced it as part of their daily updates at the State House. So we are trying hard to position ourselves as both a research and an important practice-focused institution for the state of Massachusetts. This year, we were ranked number 39 in the country in terms of our university ranking as a College of Education and Human Development. We are the 10th highest ranked private college of education in the United States. And we only see those rankings as they represent quality of our students, our faculty, and our staff. We only see those rankings growing. So I think you're going to be very pleased with sort of our quantifiable characteristics, but also if you can attend our alumni events. We have had in the last several years 2 of Massachusetts Teachers of the Year receive the Teacher of the Year award. We recently honored with a Global Impact Award, a woman who manages the global child trafficking for the US Department of State. So alumni are making a big difference around the world. And we want to know what you're doing. So please keep in touch with Maureen and Amber and let us know what's going on in your life so that we can make sure that your friends and colleagues that you made here at BU or at Historic Wheelock or at now BU Wheelock get the opportunity to be part of what we're building here. Jonathan says he enjoyed and benefited from a spirit of collaboration, incredible flexibility in designing his program. I don't think that will be sacrificed, Jonathan. The educational media program is gone. It was not here when the merger occurred. So we have an opportunity to rebuild something in the area of education, technology and education entrepreneurship, which we think Boston's a great place to do that. So stay tuned, Jonathan. We may call you and see if you want to help us brainstorm about how to make that a really terrific program. Well, I want to thank you all again for being here. I want to ask you to, if you have the time and interest, to review our strategic plan, give us feedback. We are in an important feedback phase. You know, unlike a lot of strategic plans, this one is really a founding document for us. It really will set the course for our next 10 years and will help guide our budgeting, our hiring, as well as the kind of work we do with schools, clinics, and agencies in the next several years. So we look forward to more opportunities to talk with you and give you updates about all the wonderful things we're doing here at BU Wheelock. I want to end with one interesting little tidbit, which I think for many of the historic Wheelock and historic SED folks will find quite interesting. Prior to an earlier event, I was trying to find information about the Spanish flu in 1918 and how BU and Wheelock were dealing with the pandemic back in those days. And I was unable to find any information about it. In fact, there was very little news made about it in any of the yearbooks or anything. But as I was searching, I found a very interesting bit of information. In 1920, the BU School of Education hosted a semester-long program on the development of early childhood education. And the primary lecturer for that event, for that semester-long event, was a woman named Lucy Wheelock. So Lucy Wheelock was a faculty at BU in 1920. So in some ways, the merger that occurred between BU and Wheelock College started many decades ago. And our goal is to make you proud of what we're doing and to have you be a part of it. So thank you so much for being with us this afternoon, and stay in touch, please. Bye-bye.